Hey, my friends, Derek from Bomb Socks here with more Bomb Bites, where we are feasting upon the words of Christ, and we do it one bite at a time. So this week at Bomb Socks HQ here for Bomb Bites, we're going to do a little bit differently just this week. This week, we're actually heading out of town for a couple days, so I'm doing today's episode on Monday, and it's going to actually pick up again on Thursday. So today's episode is going to take you through Wednesday. The goal is to cover Section 3 of the Doctrine and Covenants and have that be enough through Wednesday. And then Thursday, we're going to pick up with Section 4 of the Doctrine and Covenants, and then Friday, we're going to come back with Section 5. So that's just this week. So 3 episodes this week, and then we're coming back next week with our full 5 episodes for our Bomb Bites. So for this week of Bomb Bites, for chapters 3, 4, and 5, I would recommend reading chapter 5 of Saints. Chapter 5 is called All is Lost. That's going to give you tons of context of helping you this week. In fact, I'm going to fill in a little bit as we're going through this week. So that's going to help you a lot. It's a story that many people are familiar with, but I love the way Saints fills in some of those gaps here and gives you a little bit more into the characters of some of these individuals. For example, let me introduce you to Mr. Martin Harris right here. Here's Martin. Martin's a wonderful man. Martin is a great landowner in New York, very rich, very well-to-do. Martin was a little bit older than Joseph, keeping in mind that Joseph did not have a lot of friends. And here's a guy who comes along, Martin Harris. I believe he's about 40, mid-40s at the time, probably old enough to be Joseph's dad at this point, but he comes along and he's heard rumors about all of the gold plates. And Martin's a good man. He's a good man, has a good heart. He comes along and he basically says to Joseph, he goes, I've heard about these plates. Is there a way I can see them? And Joseph said, no, you can't see them, but he let him hold the box with them. And Martin, this is what Martin says in Saints. I thought it was interesting. He says, if it is the devil's work, Martin said, I will have nothing to do with it. But if it was the Lord's work, he wanted to help Joseph proclaim it to the world. So Martin financially wanted to do things to help out Joseph, but he wanted to make sure that if he was investing his money, he wanted to make sure this is definitely of God. So Martin goes home and he prays about this and gets a feeling that this is in fact from God. At the time, Joseph is a newly married. They've been married about a year or so, and has got some debts he's trying to pay off. Martin goes to Joseph and pays $50, just says, give $50 to him, which is a lot of money back then. And he says, Mr. Smith, I want you to have this. I want to show you that this is for the work of the Lord, and I am willing to do this. It's a gift I want to give to you to help you out. So later on in 1827, Emma finds out that she is pregnant, and so her family moves them in with her, keeping in mind that Isaac Hale and his family did not like Joseph. And they were trying to do translating at the time. Emma was helping translate for Joseph at this time. Emma was sick here and there, and not a lot was getting done. Martin comes along and wants to help out. In fact, this is the story that many of you are familiar with. I'd say read it in Saints, but this is where Martin takes the characters to New York, shows them to Charles Anthon and Samuel Mitchell, and they say, these are authentic, but at the same point, they were just like, where'd you get these things? And said, they were from an angel from God. And so that's where they tear it up and say, bring the records to me. And Martin said, it's sealed. And he said, I can't read a sealed book, which is fulfilling prophecy from the book of Isaiah. So again, that's an interesting story as well. You can read a little bit more. So Martin comes over now and he becomes a scribe for Joseph. And he's been doing great things. He's helping out in the work. Martin's a great man, like I said. Martin's married to a woman named Lucy Harris. Now, Lucy, I want to give Lucy every benefit of the doubt. Lucy was super hard of hearing, and she was kind of, I guess you maybe call her a busybody. She wanted to be involved in everybody's business, and because of her lack of hearing, she often had a hard time understanding conversations. She was constantly thinking that people were talking about her, and so Lucy kind of became pretty untrustworthy. So she kind of barged into the Smith's home. She's rooting through stuff. She wants to see these plates because she sees how Martin is giving a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money to this, and she just doesn't like this. And so that's where a lot of this stems from, where Martin ends up with these 116 manuscript pages. Lucy and a few others just demand, they want to see what Martin is doing. Let me take you to Saints here and show you what it says. So it says, one day, Martin asked Joseph for permission to take the manuscript to Palmyra for a few weeks. Remembering how Lucy had acted when she visited the house, Joseph was wary of the idea, Yet he wanted to please Martin, who had believed in him when so many others had doubted his word. I totally understand where Joseph's coming from there. Unsure what to do, Joseph prayed for guidance, and the Lord told him not to let Martin take the pages. But Martin was sure showing them to his wife would change things. And he begged Joseph to ask again. Joseph did so, but the answer was the same. Martin pressed him to ask a third time, however, and this time God allowed them to do as they pleased. That's where it gets tough here. Joseph told Martin he could take the pages for 2 weeks if he covenanted to keep them locked up and to show them only to certain family members. Martin made the promise and returned to Palmyra, manuscript in hand. After Martin left, Moroni appeared to Joseph and took the interpreters from him. So during this time period, Joseph's under a lot of stress. Emma gives birth to a baby boy, and it's a horrible labor. The baby only lives for a few hours and passes away. They name him Alvin after Joseph's beloved brother Alvin. And Emma is just sick. During this time period, they were fearful they were going to lose Emma as well. Joseph's worried about the manuscript pages. So Joseph's going through a lot of stress right now. The seminaries and institutes put together a video a couple years ago that I think it kind of shows a little bit the way Joseph was feeling this time. So go ahead and watch this, and this will give you some ideas.
Children, remember to sit there.
Martin, have you lost that manuscript? Have you broken your oath?
Yes, it is gone.
All is lost. I should have been satisfied with the first answer.
Oh, I've lost my soul. I've lost my soul.
The prophet suffered the torment of the damned at the loss of the manuscript. One of the most bitter lessons he would learn. Because I had pressed him, he set at naught the counsels of God. The Lord later soundly rebuked him for having feared men more than God.
So now, the reason I decided to pause it right here is I want you to go to section 3 of the Doctrine and Covenants. So in section 3 of the Doctrine and Covenants, I really just want to focus on probably about the first 10 verses or so, but I'm going to take them a little bit out of order. I want to start with section 3 and go to verses 5 through 7. Now, here is the Lord being, we said in the Doctrine and Covenants, in the introduction, it says, you will see the firm but loving voice of the Lord. And here's that firm but loving voice of the Lord. Verse number 5, behold, you have been entrusted with these things. But how strict were your commandments? And remember also the promises which were made to you, if you did not transgress them. Behold, how oft have you transgressed the commandments and the laws of God, and have gone on in the persuasions of men, keeping in mind that Joseph really wanted to please Martin during this time period. And I totally get it. Martin believed in Joseph, and so Joseph wanted to help Martin with his, family struggles there and the things that they weren't believing in. He wanted to please Martin. Verse 7, for behold, you should not have feared man more than God, even though men sat at naught the counsels of God and despised his words. So I want to throw a few questions up here. So what does it mean to fear man more than God? These can be questions you can talk about, you can think about them. Why do you think that Joseph persisted in asking the same question, even after receiving a clear answer? And how can this help us make right choices when we feel that peer pressure? Now, again, the teenagers are not the only ones that have peer pressure. There's pressure in the business world. There's pressure in family situations, all of those things. And so that's something I think you could even think about or talk about as a family, what it means to fear man more than God. Okay, so there's a couple really good verses that I do want to focus on. You go to the first 3 verses of section 3 of the Doctrine and Covenants. This really gives all kinds of comfort to this situation. So verse number 1, the works and the designs and the purposes of God cannot be frustrated, neither can they come to naught. For God doth not walk in crooked paths, neither doth he turn to the right hand or to the left. That's interesting. He is not distracted by what is going on. He focuses. Neither doth he vary from that which he hath said. Therefore, his paths are straight, and his course is one eternal round. We do not have a distracted God. Remember that it is not the work of God that is frustrated, but the work of men. So something to remember, and this is something I always tell my students, I always believe it, God is in charge. God knows what he is doing. He is aware. Even when we are not aware of what's going on, he is aware of what's going on. Now, one other quick thing, you go to verses 8 through 10. Now, this section's a great section. If you really want to complete this section, you almost need to go over to section 10 of the Doctrine and Covenants, because that does kind of give a resolution to this. And we'll talk about that when we get into section 10. But if you go to section 3, verses 8 through 10, it says, "Yet you should have been faithful, and he would have extended his arm and supported you against all the fiery darts of the adversary. And he would have been with you in every time of trouble. Behold, thou art Joseph, and thou wast chosen to do the work of the Lord, but because of transgression, if thou art not aware, thou wilt fall. But remember, God is merciful." Can I say that again? But remember, God is merciful. Therefore, repent of that which thou hast done, which is contrary to the commandment which I give you, and thou art still chosen and art called again to the work. Now, let me have you finish up this video I showed you before. I'm showing bits and pieces of it. The whole kind of context of this video is this is an older Martin Harris who is sharing this story with a family that he ends up staying with later on in his life. And he's telling a young man named William Pilkington. He's telling this young man this story. But let me have you finish this story right here, and we'll come back and conclude it.
It wasn't until later revelation that Joseph learned the true fate of the lost manuscript. It seemed the devil had sought to lay a cunning plan. He had put it into the hearts of wicked men to alter the writings of the manuscript, to see if God would give Joseph the power to translate again. If he did retranslate the same words, they would have already altered those of the first translation, so that the 2 manuscripts would not agree. And they would say that Joseph had lied, that he had no gift. Thereby they sought to destroy him and also the work.
But Brother Harris, what happened then? The wicked man, the Book of Mormon? Are there things missing?
A revelation to Joseph tells us that the works and the designs and the purposes of God cannot be frustrated. For the wisdom of God is greater than the cunning of the devil. And with it God had prepared for just such a circumstance. Many centuries earlier, the historian prophet Nephi was directed to engrave not 1, but 2 accounts of his people upon plates of metal.
The Lord hath commanded me to make these plates for a wise purpose, which I know not. But the Lord knoweth all things, wherefore he prepareth a way to accomplish all his works.
1,000 years later, the Lord would rely upon the prophet Mormon to make an abridged version of all the sacred records of the Nephites.
I searched among the records, and I found these small plates. I shall take these small plates and put them with the remainder of my record. And I do this for a wise purpose, according to the workings of the Spirit of the Lord which is in me. And now I do not know all things, but the Lord knoweth all things which are to come. Wherefore he worketh in me to do according to his will.
And thus the words of the manuscript that went out of our hands were never redone. After that, Joseph was told in Revelation to translate from these small plates instead, thereby thwarting the plans of the wicked man. But I was never permitted to write for the prophet anymore. Oliver Cowdery did the rest of that.
Brother Harris, do you still believe that the Book of Mormon is true?
Just as sure as you see the sun shining, just as sure am I that it is a divine work brought forth by the power of God. Remember, Willie, always put your trust in God and His promises, as it is not His work that is frustrated, but only the works of men. When God makes promises to us, He is able to fulfill them. And He will fulfill them.
Neither mortal man nor the devil can prevent the light of the Lord's works and purposes and designs from shining through. Such was the lesson I learned from Martin Harris himself.
One thing this section always helps me remember is remembering that God is merciful. When you and I do stupid things, when we repent, the Lord tells us we are still called to what He has asked us to do. I love that right there. It's some great stuff just in these first little parts of section 3. So anyway, it took a little bit longer today, but this is going to take over for a couple of days right here. So thanks again for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and thanks for sharing. Hope that message helped you out today. We will see you on Thursday with section 4 of the Doctrine and Covenants, one of the most iconic missionary sections ever. You guys are great. Godspeed, and we'll see you on Thursday. Bye-bye.